Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Sunday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. A phrase has been coined: trust James Gunn. Do you trust him? I believe trust inherently has to be earned. Now, as a very young man, I trusted people automatically, and it got me burnt all the time. Here's a great example. I don't want to bore you, but I want you to listen to this because it's very important in terms of the trust James Gunn kind of paraphrase that's been created out there. Even James Gunn using it himself on his Instagram story yesterday. So I was working at a supermarket called The Co-op. I looked up to the fruit and veg manager. I was 18 years old. He was about 25 years old, and he decided he would try and get me to buy his rust bucket, a Golf GTI or something. I can't remember what it exactly was, but it was a very, very old Golf. Now, I know jack shit about cars now, and I knew even less back then. He opens the bonnet, takes me to his house, opens the bonnet. I don't know what I'm looking at. He knows I don't know what I'm looking at, but it looks like he's being trustworthy, right? He then says to me, "Do you want to drive the car home?" And I wasn't sure. He persuaded me into driving the car home. All I had was a provisional driving license. I was merely taking lessons, but I didn't want to disappoint my idol, my hero. So I drove it back while stopping at traffic lights because everything at that point was going all right. I was a proficient driver, but I wasn't legally allowed to drive without a driver sitting next to me. Anyway, I made a schoolboy error. Instead of, putting the gear in neutral, I didn't. While I was waiting at the traffic light, so I jumped out the back of this woman's car. I shit myself. I sped away. This big van stopped me, told me to go back. They left. They took my number plates. I drove home. I drank a bottle of scotch. This guy, this lovely guy who sold me the car, told the police where I lived, and I had to face legal proceedings. I made the decision. It's on me. But if I didn't inherently trust him to understand me, I wouldn't have got myself in that mess. So even though it was his fault, while we were at work and I was shitting myself, because back then you couldn't go to jail for a car offence. That's changed in the United Kingdom for sure now. But he was winding me up. He was bantering me, saying, "You're going to go to jail and Big Ron's going to get you in the showers." And I was really, really scared. The person who created this nightmare for me actually thought the whole thing was fucking amusing. He betrayed me in every way that a friend could. Don't forget, this guy was about 8 years older than me, and I really looked up to him, and I thought he liked me, and I thought we were friends. I was wrong. Now, I don't have any bitterness or hatred towards him. I'm just talking to you and giving you an example of misplaced trust. Now, I don't have any agenda against James Gunn. I've mentioned this many times on this channel. But if you're asking me to blanketly trust anyone on this planet, I never will. James Gunn has to earn my trust. It's as simple as that. He has to earn your trust. Maybe he doesn't give a shit about the trust of a 50-year-old bald geezer who barely gets any YouTube views. And that's okay. I don't think I'm anything special, but I am a customer, James. And you do need me. And you do need all of us, DC fans, on your side. Well, as many as possible. Of course, the Snyderverse stands will never be on your side, but in a lot of ways, they don't really matter anyway. I support the Sell Snyderverse to Netflix campaign because I think it's uplifting and brilliant and not toxic like the Fire James Gunn one and calling him names, because I don't want to be involved in that. I think that's horrible. But the other one, the Sell Snyderverse to Netflix, is beautiful, great, and it isn't hurting anyone. Probably won't work out, but why not give it a try anyway? Snyderverse stands think it's clever to freeze frame the Shazam Fury of the Gods trailer when he's flying, the second trailer we saw this week, and try and tell you it's bad CGI when it's not, right? And they start calling him Plastic Man. And they think what they're saying is factual and that it's going to hurt the movie. It won't. So I don't really care about that element of arguments towards James Gunn. He has made some really good comic book movies, but we're not talking about Batman 89 or The Dark Knight. We're talking about Guardians 1 and 2 and The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, which are really, really good, achievements within superhero comic book adaptation genre. And I congratulate him on that. But the job he has taken on is a huge job with DC, because this is his own world. He's building. It's his vision, nobody else's. Peter Safran is a production partner. That is it. James Gunn, narratively, is creating a brand new DC film, television, gaming, and animation franchise. It's a very, ambitious, bold undertaking. And if it fails, it's James's fault. And if it succeeds, James must get the credit. He has put himself in a pressured situation. Earlier this week, Snyderverse stands went after him, and he made fun of their spelling of Save Henry Cavill's Superman, or whatever it is. Now, someone who suffers with dyslexia like me, who misses out words when he's posting tweets and has to read his whole post before posting, it's very difficult and challenging for me. And I do misspell stuff, and I do miss out words. So I can just imagine if he said it to me, I'd be hurt by that. And I think when people start pointing out, when you're having an argument with someone and they point out a word you've missed or a letter you've missed, I think they've lost the argument, haven't they? I don't think he's lost the argument. I understand why he was triggered by those people, because they're aiming personal attacks at him. I don't approve of that. Anything negative I've ever said about James has been creatively and for my love and care for DC. So I do have elements of concerns about what's going on right now. And I'm also very excited because I know what he's done in the past. And I know if anyone's capable of creating a DC universe, an interconnected DC universe, it's James Gunn. And that portion of his talent and him being involved with DC really excites me. But let's just look at what was going on prior. Let's not go back to the total histrionics, of course. We will get into that, by the way, because I have a Christopher Nolan type comparison here in terms of trusting James Gunn. Like before James and Peter came in, it was Adby and Michael DeLuca, Pam Adby and Michael DeLuca, the co-chairs of Warner Brothers Pictures, who were running DC temporarily. Or so we were led to believe. This is interesting, isn't it? They were making permanent finite decisions. They decided to bring Henry Cavill in a Black Adam post-credit scene. They were going to give him a Man of Steel sequel. They told Henry Cavill to announce this via his social media. So he did. They were literally, in a lot of ways, restoring the Snyderverse. Now, I don't know if their intention was to bring back Zack and green light Justice League 2, free the Batman and, release the air cut. I'll talk about the air cut as well, if I remember. There's no one here to remind me, but I want to say something about that as well. But hopefully I remember, because it's an important point about Harley Quinn. It's a point about live action Harley I've mentioned before, and the element of it, I don't like it. So DeLuca and Adby were making proper, permanent decisions. And all of a sudden, their time was up. James Gunn and Peter Safran came in, and James looked at it and he goes, I don't like this, I don't like the idea of Henry Cavill as Superman. He has had too many problems in the past in terms of narratively. Look where we've gone with him. Even when Henry was announced to be back as Superman, when we saw that brilliant Superman post-credit sequence, and it was, and the news was exciting. I came on this channel and I said to you, I'm concerned. How can a Superman that's been kind of dark and broody all of a sudden have Christopher Reeve's music playing all over it? That was a worry to me. And him getting a movie was a slight concern. And because I was of the mind, and still am of the mind, that the whole thing, the previous thing, the DCEU should just be burnt down, then start again. But then when I see the Shazam Fury of the Gods trailer and I see some of the good stuff from the old DCEU, I kind of want James Gunn to marry them together and kind of create a new timeline, just like Walter Hamada was going to do. So, yeah, Adby and DeLucas, for me, seem to be making permanent decisions about the future. So, to me, I think he had them there. Zaslav had Adby and DeLuca there making permanent decisions, but he was obviously still talking to people. He obviously didn't feel comfortable about DeLuca and Adby running DC as well as Warner Brothers Pictures. Of course, you could have DeLuca at DC Studios and Adby could run Warner Brothers Pictures. It seems like both of those people would have been fine for those jobs. But when you look at the decisions that were being made, bringing back Henry Cavill, wasn't this just going to cause the same old problems again and a new direction was needed? I think as hard as it is to lose Henry as Superman, we have to be as honest as we can with each other. And I think too many fans out there are too biased to have that self-assessing honesty. So, yeah, shall we trust James Gunn? Well, when he gives me something to trust him on, because what he's taking on, he's never done. There's no evidence out there of him doing something similar and it being successful. So if the announcement is good, if I like the announcement, if I like the plans, if I like the first projects that are announced and when they come out, I enjoy them, then yes, going forward, I will back him 100%. As I say, I am excited about what he may or may not give us, especially with Batman and Superman. But again, we're going to have to wait and see. This is a very interesting, unique filmmaker, for sure. And he's a very unpredictable member of, the Hollywood Illuminati. So you never really know what you're going to get from James. So it will be interesting how he differs as a writer-director to a co-chair of DC Studios. But make no mistake, this is James Gunn's world, and he will fall or rise on what he does. Let's go back to 2012-2011, when Man of Steel was announced. I don't think there was a fan that wasn't trusting and exciting when they heard that Christopher Nolan would shepherd and godfather a brand new DC Extended Universe. That's what we were told by Variety and THR at the time. Because Chris had done 3 great Batman movies, the Dark Knight trilogy, there was no reason for any of us to doubt him. Like James Gunn fans are saying, look at what he's done. How can you not trust him? Because I have learned from my mistake of trusting Christopher Nolan. Yes, I was wrong to trust Christopher Nolan because he had never any intention to direct Man of Steel. He had no intention to actually run the DC Extended Universe. His actual role was to bring Zack Snyder in. That was it. He put Zack Snyder in, and his role after that, I said that a couple of days ago, he was just trying to stop the rest of WB from interfering with Zack's vision. He brought in a divisive, controversial filmmaker because we saw, again, as I've mentioned on multiple occasions, what happened with Watchmen. Now, I like Watchmen, but diehard Watchmen fans don't like some of the stuff that he did to the movie. So a divisive director being brought in to direct the Superman movie, what could possibly go wrong? That decision is on Nolan, not Snyder. Snyder can only be what Snyder has always been. You can't give him a brain transplant, right? He's going to do what he wants to do, and we've discussed that on numerous occasions as well. So I trusted Christopher Nolan. You trusted Christopher Nolan when you heard he was going to have a Godfather role. Basically a similar position of what James and Peter are doing at DC Studios. He let us down because he really didn't want any involvement. He didn't want his Dark Knight trilogy to be part of the DCEU. Again, I think this was their first big mistake. In fact, you could have canonized Green Lantern and Superman Returns as well if you wanted, because you'd already made some films, and like The Incredible Hulk, where some people don't like it, Green Lantern could have been improved on within that brand new structure. These were the mistakes they made. So I trusted Christopher Nolan, one of the best writer-directors who's ever made content for Hollywood and the consumer ever. He's one of the best, and I trusted him, but the role he was taking on was foreign to him because he doesn't really understand DC, even though he made 3 great DC movies. That's why he brought in David Goyer to write these screenplays, because he had a more understanding of the DC universe than he does. That's the whole point. Christopher Nolan doesn't really know DC. So ultimately, Nolan was the wrong man to run this franchise. That's, had, 10 movies by now and a streaming series. So I'm bringing back the Christopher Nolan situation as a comparison. He was a writer-director, and so is James Gunn. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean we can't trust James Gunn, because James Gunn is taking responsibility here. He's writing the Superman movie. He'll write most of these movies and then allow someone probably to pen the screenplay. Who knows, he may pen the screenplays as well. So from, after the marketing drive for Guardians 3, he's going to be a very, very busy man. He's very hands-on. He's the one molding the clay. He wants complete control in the universe he's crafting. His role is very similar to what Russell T Davies did from 2005 to 2009 on Doctor Who, and the role that Russell has with his return back to Doctor Who. James Gunn is the showrunner of DC Universe, and if it works, he gets the praise. If he fails, he gets the criticism. Nobody else. I mean, you could criticize Zaslav. If it goes wrong, you'd have to give Zaslav great credit if it goes right. But some people, maybe even James, because he's coined the phrase trust James Gunn on his Instagram as well, as I commented on his Instagram story, James, I want to trust you. But here's the thing. Our hearts have been broken. DC fans' hearts have been broken too many times. We've been let down too many times. Zack Snyder came in, Jeff Johns came in, an iconic, legendary comic book writer. Walter Marder's come in. And now we've got James and Peter. James has an incredible pedigree behind him because he has got a knowledge of geek culture, but that doesn't mean he's going to pull this thing off. So you're asking me to inherently trust someone without any evidence on why I should trust them, apart from the fact that they've been a proficient, really good, great writer-director in the past. Just like Christopher Nolan was, what happened to the DCEU? It went to shit because he made the wrong decisions. He washed his hands off of it. He wasn't interested in running a comic book universe, but he made that big of biggest decision. Bring in the Snyders. Now, again, every day I say this because it's very important that I love Zack Snyder. I love him as a person and as a creative. And the 3 DC movies he gave me personally, I think are beautiful, but they weren't for everyone. That wasn't the task he was given. Warner Brothers wanted something different than the man, Christopher Nolan, that they implemented to have this Godfather role. He brought in an auteur director. They didn't want an auteur director. They wanted to do what Disney had done with Marvel. Well, actually, I'll correct that. Marvel were an independent company when Iron Man and Iron Man 2 were released. It wasn't until later on Disney bought Marvel Studios. Maybe it would have been better for Marvel Studios if they just stayed independent. And I think that, looking back at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel Studios, their accomplishments are fantastic. Even as a DC fan, an envious DC fan, I can't deny that. But I think when we look back in 20 years' time, if I'm still here in this mortal coil, I'll look back and say their biggest mistake was selling out to Disney. And should I tell you how I know that was their biggest mistake? Because I'm an old-fashioned kind of socialist, if you like. I like to stay independent. I hate powerful entities that rule the roost. But Phase 4 proves that they were better off as an independent studio. Phase 4 wasn't implemented by Kevin Feige. He had to mould it, of course, like he's moulded everything else. That was a Disney initiative, right? The whole MCU thing, that was them. Not Kevin Feige. He didn't care about representing women in the early days, did he? It's interesting, isn't it? It's like, I've mentioned Friends on here before. I've been rewatching Friends. It's so un-PC. Some of the stuff that's on that show is shocking in a way in terms of what's not acceptable today. But we've had the creatives, Marta Kauffman, come out and apologise for it, which I think's insane. Why are you apologising for creating one of the best sitcom ever? They're just funnies. They're just gags. Yeah. Look, obviously, if you're making jokes about overly large people, it can be offensive to those people. You know, we have Rachel asking Chandler to rate her boobs when he sees her naked by accident. Now, as I say, today these things are not acceptable, but we're talking about the 90s, and that's a situation, a topic I'd like to do a video of as well. The parameters have changed, but Christopher Nolan is a great comparison in what he did when he was put in charge of DC to another writer-director, James Gunn, in what he's going to do. But it's two very different situations, because James Gunn isn't going to grab a Zack Snyder and say, you're running this show, I don't want to. James Gunn is moulding this himself. So in the end, it absolutely does come down whether you trust him or not. I don't distrust James Gunn. I have more trust on James Gunn than I have Walter Hamada, because Walter Hamada was a bureaucrat, and that's the difference. James Gunn has more of the tools to create a great universe than Walter Hamada did, because he understands nerds. He understands the culture. So, but you're giving him, he's got absolute freedom here to do what he wants, because David Zaslav wants to create the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He wants to make DC Studios Marvel Studios, right? Because they're coined in the money, and they will continue to coin in the money. And it's all about money at the end of the day. So if they can make money but create a great DC universe, an interconnected one, which one of us fans is going to argue with that? So at the end of the day, if you're asking me if I'm inherently, blanketly, with any evidence in front of me, going to trust James Gunn, no. He has to earn my trust. Now, when I say he has to, he probably thinks I don't have to earn your trust. You're not my target audience. I don't care. Well, that's fine. I don't mind what he thinks. I don't care if he thinks I'm a fucking idiot. It doesn't matter about that. But I'm a fan. I'm here talking about it. I'm excited. I want DC to succeed. I'm not a driven, by a Snyder fan or David Ayer fan or any other fan. I'm a DC fan. I love what Dick Donner did. I don't just want things done the Dick Donner way. I'm a Snyder fan. I don't want things just done in the Snyder way. Are you getting me? I am open to a new way of doing things, as long as these DC characters are celebrated as accurately as possible. I don't think the comics need to be copy and pasted, but if you're going to adapt huge graphic novels like The Death of Superman and The Dark Knight Returns, adapt them properly. Don't do what Snyder did with BVS. Don't do a Superman Rebirth story within a Justice League movie. No matter how much or how obsessed you are with Zack Snyder, you must admit these things were a huge mistake. You either adapt something or you do not. Now, recently, David Ayer has been talking to people on Twitter. He explained his whole journey of Harley Quinn. He explained the third act is her movie. Suicide Squad, he said, is her movie, and in the end, she stands up to the Joker for forcing her to do the things she was doing. Again, we have another creative who's rewritten what Bruce Timm did with Harley. And he's saying that she has no responsibility here whatsoever. And that's what he was going to do in his movie. Now, I'd love to see the haircut. I want to see his proper directorial vision. I want to see what he was going to do with that film. I like the film they cut to pieces. I think it's okay, right? But it'd be interesting to see David's take on Suicide Squad 2. They should never have taken that film away from him and rejigged it. It's an absolute creative, artistic crime as far as I'm concerned. But I'm sick and tired of these progressives, because this, David can only be a progressive, because if he thinks that Harley Quinn is a victim, he's fucking joking, right? She sat there watching the Joker brutally murdering people while she laughed. She brutally victimized and murdered people. She was an intelligent, criminal psychiatrist. She's not dumb, not easily manipulated. She became what she wanted to become. She's a thug and a murderess. And when Joker came out, they accused Todd Phillips of trying to create an excuse for males who kill and abuse. But it's all right for them to make excuses for Harley Quinn because she's a female and turn her into the convenient lesbian, as we've seen in the animated series with the Poison Ivy love affair, right? They've taken her away from having this deep, toxic love affair with the Joker to something more purer with a woman. And that's where we are today. So in a lot of ways, to me, David Ayer is no better than the rest of them. I respect him. I respect James Gunn. But if they do something or say something I don't agree with, I'm going to call them out on it. Because Harley Quinn is a fucking villain. She ain't no anti-hero. Harley Quinn is dangerous. And I don't care how pretty she is, how great she looks in those scantily clad clothes, right? I don't care how sweet and, unthreatening that voice of hers sounds. She's a very, very dangerous woman. And if I saw her in the real fucking world, if she was a real character, I'd be fucking running fucking sideways and screaming for my fucking mum. Honestly. No, this woman is one of the most scariest, most dangerous people in the DC universe. And as usual, Hollywood tried to rewrite history because she happens to be a woman. Harley Quinn is a dangerous, psychotic villain. And it looks like David Ayer, in his haircut, was trying to make her an anti-hero that was just merely the Joker's victim. Now, this is very, very disappointing. Now, Todd Phillips, a man I do trust inherently because I know his worldview, I know and hope, fingers crossed, I shouldn't say I know for sure because these creatives have let me down and other DC fans so many times. I'm hoping with Todd Phillips having this opportunity to, direct and write for Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, we don't cheat the character and say she's just the Joker's victim. I want, if we want to say, look, everyone, all the progressives are saying we want to see independent, strong women. Ultimately, by rewriting Harley's history, they're saying she's not a strong, independent woman and she was controlled by that horrible, evil, incel Joker man, right? But how about in Joker Folie à Deux, the Joker sequel, Joker 2, we see a Harley Quinn played by Lady Gaga that's actually independent and strong and ruthless and psychotic and a killer because that's exactly who Harley Quinn is. The reason they gave her that unthreatening voice is to make her seem that she's misunderstood. But she's not. She's dangerous. She would kill you. You would not be safe with that woman. She's a lunatic, right? She was an intelligent sociopath. Basically, I think a lot of people say this as well, that maybe she was even manipulating through her intellect other inmates of Arkham Asylum. And actually, if you flip it, it's possible that she actually manipulated the Joker into falling in love with her. But if you say that's not possible, then you're saying she's not independent and not strong and not clever enough to do that. So that says something about you. You progressives at 1 minute will say, we want strong, independent women. Then you'll say, oh yeah, but Harley's just a victim. Which means she's dumb. If she's the Joker's victim, an intelligent psychiatrist who studied criminal mind think, right? If you're saying she was so easily manipulated, I think that's insulting to the women consuming that. and to the character that Bruce Timm created. I think Harley Quinn is well, she's a queen to a lot of people. I think Harley Quinn is better than that. And I think as writers and directors, we must give her something a lot more deeper. Give her more food for thought. But just saying she's the Joker's victim, or we can't catalogue that relationship because it's glorifying a toxic relationship, are the reasons this industry has gone to the dogs. This has been Sunday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully in the next 2 days, James Gunn will give his DC Universe announcement. And then we'll really have something to get our teeth into, and then I will go live. So until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.